Are we having fun or what? Hackers on Planet Earth 2020. It's all virtual. It's in your head. It's on your computer. And right now it's going to get you moving because we're doing another fantastic performance starting at midnight, technically on day 6 in New York Eastern Daylight Time, where the conference would have been if we were in person, but we're not. We're everywhere. We're in your head. This performance is Joshua Freed, who is Radio Wonderland. Radio Wonderland turns mass media into recombinant funk. We're going to get live FM radio. We're going to get mixes. We have shoes behind him there. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have a music set for a little while. Then we'll come back and have some discussion with Joshua. Stay up late, stay energized. It's in your head right now. Welcome, Radio Wonderland.
It's rough, Delilah. She did tell me she was getting married. I don't know if she married or if I have grandchildren.
What's your daughter's name? What's your daughter's name? What's your daughter's name? What's your daughter's name for her? And I hope that God helps you two to heal the distance.
Thank you, Delilah.
Okay.
You have a wonderful show. I mean that.
So on the CBS News Radio 880 Mets Network, and Vasquez drove in 2 more. Said the
went on. One time for the whole Long Island, New York. Cause I'm raw, just came to happen.
Remind us how we used to be. Everybody searching.
One time for the OGs out there too.
I'm a sucker for you. New York, New Jersey, U1027.
If you don't wanna see me,
WBLX.
And I was trying to act as if I was okay, but I was dying inside. Do you walk around with a smile on your face, but inside you're just like a jumble of pain and emotions and you got no place to take it? Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. You 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 show is a safe place to take it. This show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully this show is a safe place to take it. Hopefully the show is a safe to hopefully the show is a safe to show is safe to fully show is safe to fully show is safe to fully show is safe to hopefully this show Hopefully this show. 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 Hopefully this.
Well, they're not a good defense.
20s.
You're not.
Rolling non-stop. Q104.3, New York's classic rocks, 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 classic rock. 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 Classic rocks. Classic rocks. Classic rocks. Classic rock. 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 Classic rock.
Hopefully this show. 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 Hopefully this show.
Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rock. Classic rocks. 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 Classic rocks.
Hopefully this show. 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 Hopefully.
That was my set.
Fantastic. There was a lot of jamming, rocking,
yes, there
tapping,
was.
head banging, all kinds of things.
Did it sound okay? Was it clear?
I think the sound quality was excellent. The one thing that a few people remarked on was you must have some bass in your location there, because we could see the camera vibrating as the bass was hitting.
You
it.
mean?
Exactly.
Oh, I'm on a different camera now. Yeah. So.
Exactly.
Well,
Exactly. So that was a lot of fun.
Fair enough.
So why don't you start? I mean, it's great to have you here. This is our guest for this morning's performance, Joshua Freed, who is Radio Wonderland. I think it would be fun if you would just introduce us to your gear, because we've been listening to it, and it would be nice to get a little insight into what it is, how it works, how you set it up.
Yeah. Okay. Now I have to tell you, when I get off stage, my mind is scrambled. So it may take me a few minutes just to get it straight.
How about if we ask you one at a time? I mean, tell us, you have an old style radio with an analog dial there, and that's obviously input to some of your samples.
That is the sole input for all of my samples. Everything comes from the radio. I start with nothing, and it's all from scratch, as it were. And I try to make that clear.
Mm-hmm.
When I do a show on stage in front of people, you know, we used to all go into the same room for some reason and stand there or something.
Doesn't ring a bell. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah. I think it has to do with some mating ritual. I would walk through the space carrying the boombox, and then have an audience member tune it, and then plug it in, and then, oh, that's in the sound system. But here I didn't do that because it just seemed a little silly. So yes, that is a boombox from the 80s, and once I realized that the volume control is how I like it, and it has 2 output jacks, I decided I should get several of them, and I have about a dozen of that same model, so I don't have to worry about it breaking and ruining my show. So yes, so that's the input.
So that's an old school radio. Now I take it you're in New York, because I recognize some of those radio station call signs.
Yes, indeed.
And that is live radio, right? I mean, it's like they recorded it before.
It's absolutely, yeah, that's the whole thing. I would never record it beforehand. That would ruin the concept and would make me feel very blue. And no, I'm not into that. And you got Delilah, who's national or international with her. Yeah, I love Delilah. This kind of work, if you think about it, works best with roughly sustained sounds. So soft rock is a perfect thing to dismantle for my musical ends, if for no other reason.
You like the talk radio though, also.
Well, yes, and I need speech to create percussion, as I did. Mm-hmm. And that was Delilah. Now that I remember, yes, that was Delilah. And yeah, that was fun. Her little bit, I forget what she was saying. That's another thing that goes straight out of my head. People will come up to me after a show and say, "Oh, it's so amazing, that thing you got about dreaming, and then you got Dreams by Fleetwood Mac." And I would say, like, what? I don't even remember. But there was something about New York hits, New York's classic rock, and and hopefully, right? There's,
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
you got the key word there.
Yeah, and that's the kind of cheesy thing where, if I was going to plan in advance to have some samples for the Hope Conference, would I really choose hopefully or hope? No, but this was something that just came on the air, and I took it, and it just seemed to work. You know, the first time I performed at Hope, there was kind of a magical moment. It was in the Hotel Pennsylvania, in their lounge area, and I got some sportscast, and the announcer, it was a commentary. It was WFAN or something like that. It's ESPN radio or something. And the person said, "In this era of unfettered free agency," and that's a very kind of hackery sentiment. And so I grabbed that, and people went ape, and it was electric. It was really fun. And again, that's nothing I would have thought of beforehand. The equivalent that I could have thought of beforehand would have been cheesy, and everyone knew that it was in the moment. And I'm sorry that we can't all be in the same room, because that's part of the charm. But
we're trying to simulate here. So I want to continue with the gear, but you just said something interesting and about improvisation. And I wonder, just in terms of your preparation for an event like this, how much is in your head of what you're going to? I know that you're jamming on the radio. You don't know what's going to be on the radio. How much of the set is sort of in your head, and how much just emerges as you're in the moment?
Well, I have certain practices that work for this project. It's good when I create a kick drum out of radio towards the beginning. I like to have sort of a tonal foundation also towards the beginning. But once I have that kick drum, I can go with the percussion next, or the sort of tonal foundation, depending on what I pick up on the radio. I also want to have some kind of a catchphrase. And depending on where I am between commercial breaks and the music, I will get one of these things sooner or later. And then I want to jam. And if a piece of radio seems melodic enough, even if it's spoken word, I'll see about, can I really make a melody or a bass line out of this? And that was the word hope. That was the O of hope. And that became that very poppy kind of bass line that was fun. I didn't know, once I had it, I liked it so much I kind of didn't know what else to do with it, but it was just, I kept on enjoying it and rolling with it.
That's fascinating. So it's very organic, and yet it's also there's a structure to it that you're following.
Yes, yeah, there's a structure that has to do with sort of the narrative of cobbling together the groove, which is somewhat dependent on what I get on the radio, especially at the beginning. And I also think of an ending. I don't try to make up or concoct an ending. I think about endings, and I have some standard endings. Like I often end with the turntable wheel, and that can be really fun. Sometimes I end with a massive tempo change, which I didn't do at all. But the wheel is I didn't do it all just now. But the wheel is also a tempo knob, so I can slow everything down or speed it up, and then when I slow it down, you can really hear the way this is not like Ableton Live. I am not warping radio to fit my tempo. I'm arbitrarily conforming radio to my tempo by rigidly spitting out the samples on my rhythmic timeline that's my tempo and is completely unrelated to what's on the radio. So you get this grotesque phasing between the tempo of whatever the song was and my tempo, which is something that I like, and you don't get that in normal DJing.
Well, it absolutely works. There's no doubt about it. You mentioned the wheel. We got to know more about the wheel. So tell us about the electronics in that Buick steering wheel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I worked with Eric Singer, who was a great. I don't know if you know him, but he's worked a lot in Max MSP, and he also created robotic instruments with his organization called Lemur, which is the League of Electronic Musical Urban Robots. And he helped me make this wheel. I invented it, and he did the microchip, the microcontroller, which is his own not Arduino thing. And I think he called it he called his the little microcontrollers that he was making at the time, he called E-Rock something. And so that's his. So he modified his own E-Rocktronic microcontroller thing, and that uses an optical encoder, and that is converted into MIDI. And all of my controllers are MIDI, not OSC, which would be cool, but I'm rocking it old school. MIDI is down and dirty and reliable. So the wheel, the shoes, and my fader box are all MIDI. That fader box is not a mixer. All the processing is in the laptop, and it's all Max. It's all Max programming. And so the optical encoder is giving me 120 increments per rotation, and it works fine for everything that I do except the turntable wheel, which I would like to have it. I will get a high resolution wheel for that, but it's absolutely robust the way I like it. The encoder is, I don't remember what model or what have you, but it's basically was designed for industry. And so this thing is not going to go bad. This is designed to be part of a controller for some like weaving factory or something like that. So I could play the wheel for 10 years and that thing isn't gonna go bad. I will replace it for reasons of resolution before it goes bad.
So we were watching closely, and we saw that when you turned the wheel, the fader sliders were moving. So is there anything mechanical in this system, or is it all electronically controlled? Because it looked like it could have been a mechanical control.
No, it is. That is.
We lost your. There it is. We lost your audio for a moment.
Oh no!
Oh, you're back. It's okay. But maybe start from talking about the mechanical on the fader.
Oh, and I got this. I got the Zoom warning. I got the Zoom. Your internet is unstable.
It was great for the performance, though. That's what matters.
Yeah.
I think you're okay.
Thank you.
Let's continue.
What was I saying? Oh, the mechanical part. So, because I'm using flying faders, although I only have 8 motorized faders, that is, although I only have 8 actual sliders, I have unlimited virtual sliders. Or maybe virtual isn't the word, because each slider will move physically to correspond to the value of the parameter that I'm controlling at that time with that slider. So I can have a set of 8 sliders for the various levels of the parts of my groove, or I can have 8 sliders for various parameters related to the shoes, or related to my filter and my echo and stuff. So when I go to the different pages, which just seems like an intuitive term for it, these sets of faders, they will physically match their value. But I have my filter fader, and it's when I'm on that, in that context, that I also have the wheel controlling the filter. So that fader's got to go up and down with the wheel. So yeah, that's how that happened, but it's all through MIDI.
And your fader was your main instrument, right? I didn't see you touching the laptop, or did I miss it?
No, the laptop is giving me feedback, and I could show you, I have a vocoder, super cheap ass. Of course it's not going to work because, like I said, once I'm off stage, so just a second here. You can still hear me?
Yeah, we hear you okay.
Okay, but why am I not? Oh, here we go. It's just a vocoder on the radio that I have from the computer keyboard. So it's basically nothing with the laptop. And in fact, I used to say in one of my promo blurbs, but I hardly touch the laptop because I can't stand the well, I shouldn't say that. There's some great people, but the DJ, the laptop scene, and the Brooklyn experimental music laptop scene where they're hunched over their laptop, and the standard joke is, are they doing their email? And like everyone comes up with that joke independently when they see that, and I just didn't want any part of that. So what I'm seeing on the screen is feedback of what potential loops have audio in them, which of my tracks of reshuffled and reordered and transposed radio have patterns in them, what those patterns look like. But I don't know what the sound is going to be beforehand, so I just number my slices of radio and I number my loops, and then I try to remember them.
Yeah, so the radio it's a little like an oscilloscope or just a signal, just showing you the signals that you're dealing with.
Yeah, except I don't actually have waveforms in my screen.
Oh, so
I'm thinking about
what's the visual then? Or is it like beats per minute or something? Or what are you getting out of it?
I have gosh, if I had it handy, but I'm using a separate computer for streaming, and it doesn't have my files on it. But I have a picture of my grids. So I have my various tracks, and it actually looks like the interface for programming an 808 drum machine, kind of, where there's 16 slots that can have a note in them, and the note is denoted by a number. And the transposition, which is controlled by the wheel, I can hear, and I don't bother with that, with displaying the number. And the assignment of my various buffers to various assignments is also reflected on my screen. So I can say, oh, well, I only have a finite number of buffers and a finite number of tracks. And so I assign radio to them, and I think, oh, well, I have one empty slot there. Let me assign this piece of radio to that. Or when I'm trying to remember, like, where was that? Like where was the 80s thing and where was the hopefully thing? And I'll look and I'll say, oh, yeah, that's that rhythm over there. And then I know the button to push.
I see. Yeah, so it's really a sort of a memory aid more than anything else. It sounds like is a display on laptop.
Yeah. I have great plans for Radio Wonderland 2.0 software, and one of the things I'll have is actual waveforms, which will help. But it's still, I'm dealing with unknown radio.
Yeah, it might be enough. I don't know. Tell us a little bit about the software. This is obviously an ongoing. An ongoing process, but tell us a little about the development environment and the code complexity, whatever you want to share.
Well, I wish I had the visual aids with me, but I'm still too green on this computer and with streaming, so I didn't load any of my media files on here. The focus was on doing the gig, but it's all programmed in Max. And Max is the graphical programming environment that started at IRCAM, which is the Computer Music Institute in Paris, France. And then it was in the, early 90s, marketed commercially by Opcode. And that was quickly bought by Cycling 74. I think I have this right. If there's a Max head in the audience, they'll probably steer me straight. And Cycling 74 is a great little company. And they have developed Max, and around the mid-90s, Max, which was a graphical programming environment for MIDI, introduced signal processing in Max. And so all of a sudden, I was able to use the graphical programming environment where you move a little, I guess it's a little bit like Visual Basic or something like that. You move these modules around on the screen, and then they get connected. You draw lines to connect them, and you could do that with graphical objects that represented an audio signal. And so I could route and I could slice. But another thing you can do is create logic and trigger events at the sample rate. So what I can do is press a button that starts a ramp that's propagating at the sample rate, and I will say, well, 1/8 into this ramp, fire off an event. And all of this sequencing is done at the sample rate, so it's very precise. Now, for some programmers, they may look at that and think, well, why on earth do you need to propagate something at the sample rate to get precise timing? Just program it. But but Max is a higher level language than that. And conceptually, it's really very elegant and wonderful to think in terms of different elements propagating numbers at the actual audio sample rate. And those numbers could be audio waves, which I then multiply, or I multiply to attenuate or to make louder, for instance, or to envelope, or transpose by racing through them with at a different rate from the original rate. But I can also create sample precise timing in that audio environment, and that really appeals to me. And so I'm kind of addicted to that way of thinking. I would say, though, I taught Max programming at NYU. After I developed this for so many years and started performing, I ended up teaching it. And one thing I realized is that although it's really glorious to work in this high-level language, if the project has a certain complexity, you're going to break out of that language. You can't have infinite complexity with this graphical environment. You're going to end up scripting it. You're going to write your own objects. You're going to have some kind of escape hatch, which in Max MSP, or Max as they now call it, they added the MSP and then it became so old, I think they're now just calling it Max. You can script Max in JavaScript, actually. It also has Java support, and it has its own little compiler. So you can get ultra efficient code, but it's still in this kind of dreamy high level thing. You're never worrying about allocating memory, and you still can have these objects that conceptually are spitting out numbers at the sample rate. And I really like that.
Wow. So you've been, is it fair to say you've been working on the same Max program for years and years, or do you, because you mentioned a 2.0, or is it something that you do and it's done? You know, in other words, are you done with Radio Wonderland 1.0 and is it always a work in progress? Yeah. I'm just wondering about if you're always in the Max, always tweaking it, always developing it, always things to do.
No, I'm not, and it's kind of a crazy tale. But I developed this over a number of years and was debugging it, and it took so many years. I finally decided two things. One, I could spend another 3 months debugging, or I could work around the bugs and get on stage now, finally. And so I started gigging. Mm-hmm. And I made a deal with myself. I'm not going to write another line of code or drag another graphical object with the mouse until I have a record out. And because the idea was perform, record the shows, and this should help make me prolific and be able to release more stuff. And so this was 2007. I figured, 2009 or whatever, I'll have a record out, and then 2010 I'll finish the debugging, maybe do another version. Well, the album didn't come out till 2016. And it's better for it because I got really good at performing this. And although it was my intent, I still had to really learn to honor this requirement of a kind of mastery. I need to become somewhat virtuosic at this in order to make good grooves. It's such a basic instrument, and the wheel isn't going to be in tune. It's transposes in half steps with one octave, one rotation being one octave. So I still have to learn it, and I had to learn the feeling of all the different buttons and applying things to the grid, and get accustomed to which button to hit. So I put out an album in 2016 called Seize the Means, and now I'm finally working on new stuff, because after the album I toured and I did some good shows, and I want to release some of those. And so Radio Wonderland 2.0 is one of the next projects after these releases. So it's been that many years, and in fact, that's a power book. That's a 1999 power book that's running the Max MSP.
Wow. So you don't want to change that at this point, I guess.
No, it's going to be, everything's going to be retooled. And the great thing about one of those is that I can have several, because if you can find them, they're like $30. And yeah, it's funny. There's not a lot of Macintosh at Hope, but I don't know, super happy to be here.
I'm on a Macintosh at my end, so we got at least a couple of us.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Was that so?
Yeah. So I think the big question I've been saving is, tell us about the shoes. There's a lot of demand to know exactly what's going on with the electronics of the shoes, and why you chose shoes. Why shoes of all things?
Oh, I didn't already answer that? Oh, okay.
No, we skipped it. I went over your shoulder from right to left as I'm looking at you, and skipped the shoes because I wanted to come back to the shoes.
Skip the shoes,
so to speak.
Skip the shoes. Well, there's the reasoning, and then there's how it actually happened. The reasoning is that these electronic drum triggers normally look like they're out of a science fiction movie, and an old science fiction movie, and you see them in a music store, and they have this kind of sterile vibe, and they seem to imply that it has to look like that to sound like that. It's an electronic-y thing. But I reject that, because these are just objects that I'm hitting, and it's digital, so it's completely arbitrary. It could be anything. It's not musical instrument-y, it's hitting an object-y. You know what I mean? So it's a surreal disconnect, because the whole digital interface is arbitrary and surreal. It's all just made-up arbitrary stuff. So really, conceptually, it would be a shoe and an iron and a brick and a book. You know what I mean? But that would be a hassle to play. And also, that's just not how it really happened. How it really happened was, back in the 80s, where I was part of the club scene, I was working with gates, and I had this thing where I would have a gate controlled by a microphone, so I would speak or tap the microphone, and some tape loop would come out of some completely different sound. And then one day, when I was walking past this local stereo store, they had in their $1 junk bin a wireless mic and a receiver for $1. And I took it home, and it was really, really crappy. No matter how close I was and changed the battery, it was horrible. But I could yell at it, or I could whack it, and there would be something that would just rise above the noise floor. But then I realized, I could control a gate. I don't have to hear noise. I could just have a threshold and a trigger and control a gate. So then I thought, I'll put this wireless mic inside an object. And so I thought of a shoe, and it just fit easily in a shoe. And then the next time I performed on Avenue A, I had the shoe and was whacking it with a drumstick, and it was this performative thing. And then when I was trying to do more developed compositions, I just thought, okay, more shoes. And I couldn't let go, because I didn't want to do that electronic drum pad thing. So it's not as if I had the Drumcat or the Octapad or the Simmons, you might know those names, and then abandon it. It was more like I had triggers that were surreal, and believe me, it would be easy if I went out and bought one of those things. Because the shoes, they break down, they need to be repaired. but I can't. I have to keep that wacky, surreal thing as part of the show because I want to keep on hitting people with how silly and arbitrary it is.
Yeah,
So-
it works. I think it gets that message across. I want
Oh,
to
I'm
know,
so glad.
did you upgrade from the crappy microphone, or did you go out and buy 50 of those and have the last year for the rest?
Oh no, they're wired. The shoes are wired,
No.
and they have piezo transducers in them, and they go to a commercial store-bought Alesis D4 drum module, which is designed to convert audio into MIDI. So it's giving me MIDI, and they're very nice sensors. It responds well under a millisecond, and each trigger has parameters so that you can lock out leakage from the neighboring trigger. And these were designed to be put on drum sets where these tom-toms, that are vibrating like crazy. So you really have to watch out. Like when you whack this one, the other one is going to respond heavily, much like the camera, right? When the bass was hitting. And so there's a threshold to mask out that crosstalk. And then again, it's I don't know if I said this earlier, but the basic scheme of Radio Wonderland is input is 100% the boombox, processing is 100% max MSP, and controllers are 100% MIDI.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know when that's going to change. I know that there are higher resolution protocols like OSC, and I'm still kind of on the fence with Radio Wonderland 2.0 as to how I want to do that, frankly. It's shocking, I'm really into precision. And I used to teach MIDI at NYU also, and that MIDI pitch bend and a lot of the MIDI continuous controller protocols, although they provide for 14-bit precision, 16,384 increments or something, in most cases that's just not implemented by the big manufacturers like Roland and such. They're just using the 128 because it doesn't matter, which is nuts. And yet it's just very funny what our ears have tolerance for and what they don't.
Fascinating. So yeah, Purtuit, I don't know, the other thing I was wondering about, you got this 80s boombox, and radio is becoming increasingly digital. And,
right.
You don't have too much longer before some of those stations probably are not even going to be, broadcast. I mean, that's happened with digital TV, for example. Digital radio hasn't had quite that transformation yet.
Well, yeah, and there was a few years ago yet when radios were being marketed as about to go digital. I went to Stereo Exchange in New York City, and they were telling me like, oh, just forget it. It's just going to be a few years. The new generation is coming. It's going to be just like digital TV, but it hasn't happened yet. I am willing to do the digital radio when it is as responsive as my boombox. I don't mind the static. In fact, it's kind of fun to sample static, and sometimes I'll tune between stations and trigger the shoes with that noise. It's a rich, it's a very colorful white noise. Put it that way. When digital radio is that responsive, I'll go for it. But until that, I really hope the analog radio stays, and perhaps I'll focus my performances abroad. Actually, I haven't even thought of this particular question since the virus came, because who knows if I'm going to be traveling abroad to do gigs. I've performed in a lot of other countries in the past, and I could see trying to go to places where radio is that ubiquitous. I need the real-time response of the knob. But, if it does happen where the digital radio is not giving me what I want, and the analog radio has disappeared, and I have to plug in a computer or something like that, I guess it would be okay.
Cross that bridge when you get to it.
But we're a few years into the demise of analog radio. It has happened in Europe, in Northern Europe, in Germany or Finland or something, where they really are reducing the stations.
Yep, in England also. England also is there's a whole lot of digital. And the thing is, one of the big differences that I was experiencing when I was there is in the U.S., your cars have an analog radio, or maybe they have a Sirius XM, but they have the analog radio. And in my experience in Europe was they had these radios that could pick up the digital signals So to me, that's a lot of the reason why regular analog over the airwaves radio isn't going away too soon.
Okay, that's a very good point. Yes, well, maybe if I stick to one of these developing countries like the USA, or these less developed, or the stunted development, if I stay in that zone, then maybe I'll be okay with my analog radio.
Well, you could always use shortwave, I guess. So I mean, it wouldn't be the same radio, but there are other.
Yeah, but shortwave has become a wasteland. Shortwave is not nearly as dense as it was, and also I like the FM bandwidth. I don't even use AM as a rule. I need that fullness.
When I first saw the boombox, I noticed it has a cassette deck, and I was wondering if you ever would mix in even from a different signal source, pre-recorded, tape loops and that sort of thing.
If someone convinced me to, if I had a special reason to do it, I might. But I like the found sound business. I was once asked to perform in Philadelphia at a Van Halen tribute event. And I thought about it and I decided, this is so much fun. I want to be performing these out-of-town dates. So I also happen to have a FM transmitter. So I had someone create for me a nonstop Van Halen source file that I then had on my iPhone, and I plugged that into my transmitter, which I had on the corner of the stage, and then I tuned the boombox into that station, so that way I was able to do the all Van Halen. But I really like the found sound. I just like the discipline, like I was saying before. I don't want to be the guy digging in crates or trying to come up with the most mind-blowing sample. It's more like I want all of our minds to be blown by what happened to be on the radio, and then use my wits to process it.
Yeah, no, it absolutely makes sense. We had a couple of questions from the live stream audience. The first one I'll mention here is, it's just curiosity, similar to what I just asked about tape loops and stuff. Have you ever mixed touch tones, telephone noises, these types of electronica noises?
I did years ago in the 80s. I had a tape loop based one-person dub dance band, and I performed in clubs. I was known as Joshua, and I had a record out on Atlantic Records. And I did do a piece that sampled, but it wasn't sampling because it was analog tape that I then spliced with high precision, various phone sounds. But then Kraftwerk did it really well on the Technopop album. The album was called Technopop, and the song was called Music Nonstop, or was it the other way around? I think the album was called Technopop. But it's like, I call it one of the later Kraftwerk albums, like 6 albums after Autobahn or something like that. I am still with Radio Wonderland on this warpath of found sound, and also there's the cultural thing of using commercial culture and cutting it up, which is really fun.
This resonates with Hope entirely. That's the creativity, treating object signals, policies, what have you, as input, and then figuring out what to do with them.
I also have done other pieces. I'm not only Radio Wonderland. I've done other pieces that have processed sound and melodies that I compose in advance, and I've done different sound collage kinds of things. I plan on doing more of it. I actually, in addition to Radio Wonderland 2.0, I have another project that is just in the early stages where it's going to be sound processing and interesting sources. There's a great musician who's known as Antenes, Antenes, who's done a lot of work with analog phone gear and has made techno out of it. So whoever's asking that in chat, you might want to check out Antenes.
Okay, that sounds great. There's a suggestion related to what we were talking about analog radio going away, and it was basically to consider using software-defined radio and set up
Yes. That's what I was thinking of when I said internet radio, right. But software-defined radio includes terrestrial radio waves that are just tuned in and processed with software, right?
Like your dial there. So I hear it's like, what is that? Why is that different or better than the boombox, right?
Well, doesn't, maybe I'm completely wrong, but does software radio only include software control of an actual tuning circuit that is tuned into terrestrial waves, or can it include internet radio?
Well, I think you can mix in what you want to mix in, and the suggestion in the chat was actually to mix in a time machine. And there was a Hope talk in 2018 saying make a radio time machine, a software-defined radio. The idea there, which I think might be appealing, is not just skipping around the spectrum of live, but skipping around the spectrum and sort of a X and Y axis, going back in time or forward in time. So it's just sort of a suggestion.
How far back in time am I going, and what is the material that's coming in?
Well, I mean, this is, it's not what you were talking about. You said you really love jamming on the live radio, and I get that. But the idea is that, let's say you sample, I don't know, you have 5 years of BBC, for example, or something else where there's an archive, and you can move back and forth in time as easily as you move back and forth on the radio dial.
Oh, and there was a Hope talk where they implemented this.
I don't know if it was that exact example, but yeah, it was along those lines. Yeah, make a radio time machine. Looks like another Zoom glitch. We'll ride it out. We're riding out the glitch. Luckily, this didn't happen during the amazing performance. There's still time for 1 or 2 questions if Joshua gets back. I'm monitoring the live feed here. Do we have elevator music? We have an elevator music bump, I think. I don't know if we can grab the soundtrack right away. I've lost Joshua. We'll hang on for a minute, and I mentioned this during Lightning Talks the other day. This is why we pre-record. We encourage pre-recording a lot of the content, because you just never know what's going to happen with a live online conference. I'm surprised my connection has been so stable. I've only lost my signal once or twice. Doing a little elevator music. We will count to 60 together, and if he's not back, well, maybe you should. Yeah, I'm talking to Jolie on the other channel. Maybe you should drop in the John Cleese for that'll take us 30 or 60 seconds into the future, and then we'll come back and see if Joshua's joined us. John, please, compact computer.
Hello. I'd like to tell you about Compact's new Portable 2 computer. It's such a marvelous machine that it would be quite unfair to compare it with another computer. So, we've decided to compare it with this fish. Now, the fish weighs 22 pounds, which makes it extremely portable. It will fit snugly on the passenger seat of your car, or when traveling by train, on the luggage rack. By coincidence, the computer weighs exactly the same, so nothing to choose between them so far. But how much can they remember? Well, the Portable 2 has a memory of 4.1 megabytes, a fair old number of megabytes, as I'm sure you'll agree. The fish, on the other hand, can't remember a thing. Hardly surprising, really, because it's stone dead. Expect he could give you a megabyte, though. Oh, sorry. Anyway, I expect you've been wondering just how much IBM software this fish can run. The answer, I'm afraid, none. The Compact Portable 2, however, can run all IBM's most popular software 30% faster than IBM can. Ha, ha, ha. So, if you're looking for a powerful portable computer that doesn't smell, we suggest you buy the Compact Portable 2. Of course, choice. Sorry, I was miles away. Of course, the choice is yours.
And we're back through the magic of the internet. I'm here with Joshua Freed, Radio Wonderland. We had a slight mishap with the Zoom, which I mentioned, Joshua, while you were away. This is why we encourage speakers to pre-record. I'm so glad that you didn't pre-record, because the magic of your performance is that it's happening right then.
Well, thanks. I mean, I suppose I could have, but then like, would I perfect it? And I don't want to work that way. I want to do the next game.
Yeah, the live stream approach is exactly it. So we were okay. I think we're probably done with what we were talking about. We were talking a little bit about software-defined radio and doing samples back in time. It was really just a suggestion, just a thought that came in.
Yes, and yeah, it is really intriguing. But the thing is, if I imagine like I go from left to right, to let's say change the station. This is what you were saying. Right. And then I go front and back to go back in time, but the same station in time, it won't feel like the same thing in the past. It'll be completely different material.
It will. So you'll have two dimensions to work
I just have to conceptualize that.
And so there's a really cool app. Someone might remind me what it is. It's a website which is internet radios around the world, and you actually navigate to where they are physically. So you can navigate like a globe to get there.
Oh yes, yeah. Oh yeah.
And the thing is, it's what you love. It's live broadcast radio, except instead of coming over the air in Manhattan or wherever you are, it's over the internet, but it's picking up the on-air broadcast.
Yeah. Another argument to push me out of analog radio is right now I think people intuit it. Even though radio is kind of old-fashioned, they know I'm tuning and I'm getting live radio. But there might be a time when such a site such as the one you describe is more familiar to people than a radio. Indeed. And that's one of the things that I like, is that this is such an iconic thing. Like, they know what a radio is. They get it when I start slicing it up. Everything is they could just recognize without thinking it. I really like that. But the times may change.
That's true. You didn't need to explain at all that this is a radio with over-the-air broadcast. I mean, I managed to pick up that it was in the New York metropolitan area because I recognized some of the call signs, and also because of the density on the dial. And there's not that much, a lot of places where you don't have that much density of stations.
Yes, I know. Right.
So, yeah. But if you want to be in, even for example, where I am, I get two radio signals. I get I get CBC and I get the local, sort of pop station. Right. So that's not going to be a very good Radio Wonderland experience going from one station to the other.
Yeah, but I've had some good shows like that, and also there's the advantage that in that community, like, they know that station. And in New York, it's so completely disparate. Everyone has their own station if they have any at all. And New York does not have any country right now on the FM dial, and does not have any traditional Christian radio, but it does have Christian rock, which is, this is one of these things that you wouldn't know unless you were doing the kind of thing that I'm doing. The Christian rock is this whole genre that's completely distinct from family radio, as it's known. So through doing this, I've become this kind of radio hobbyist, learning what the different stations are in New York and how they come and go.
Yeah, well, you're in the right place to talk about radio hobby. I think the other suggestions would be to think of a scanner, and picking up what people are talking about on the police band, on the fire band, on the CD.
Yeah, and I almost did that during the density of the protests. The protests are still happening, but they're not as fast and furious in New York. But there's too much dead air. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that drove me to sampling radio is because I was dealing with found sound, and I would sometimes have an audience person say something into the mic, or I would yell into the mic and process it. But radio is already compressed, and it has a fixed frequency bandwidth too, and it's always on because dead air is a no-no, and that's just really, it makes it so much easier. It's made to be sampled. It's made for what I'm doing. It's pre-compressed. And so the problem with the police radio is that it's just so sparse. But then again, you could take software-defined radio that will jump to whatever station is showing something.
Well, yeah, or the scanner,
I said
right?
showing.
So
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just I'm not. What do I know?
So the scanners, right? Oh, so the scanners do that. They will always.
You'll program. I mean, there's different scanners. There's some that you operate by turning a little knob, going from station to station, hoping there's something to listen to.
Right.
But there are others where you just set it to continuously scan whatever set of frequencies you tell it to, and when there's something broadcasting, it stops. Now, of course, in the real world, sometimes someone's pressing their little radio button, or it's a carrier signal, and there's no one talking or anything like that. But you can scan frequencies automatically.
Well, if the scanner looks for stations that are on the air and locks into them, that won't work. I need a scanner to select the station that is on the air and is making sound.
Right, exactly.
But software-defined radio is exactly where I would do that.
Yeah, that might be the next generation. Listen, we only have a couple more minutes, and I want to. I think I want to ask you a question that is maybe slightly cliche, but I mean, you've talked about it's got to be, I think, at least 30 years of this project and predecessor projects. And how did you get started? What sort of brought you to this in the first place? Were you musically trained, anything like that, or?
The instrument I got best at was the drums. But I also play keyboard and sing some. And I played drums and took piano lessons. And in high school, I was in the orchestra and played in some bands. But by the time I went to college, I knew that I just couldn't be a musician. Because to be a musician, you needed to be a virtuoso. Or maybe you could be a conductor. But you had to practice 8 hours a day and be a virtuoso on one thing. And I wasn't, so I knew it was all over. So I went to college, and I happened to move into a house where they had an electronic music studio in the basement. And I started to get stoned a lot, and I discovered dub reggae and Eno, and this room that had this tape recorder, and I made my first multi-channel tape loop, and then I couldn't stop. Right. And an amazing thing, and if anyone is thinking of going into the creative field, you'll be lucky if you had this thing happen to you that happened to me. It's almost like a mental game I played with myself, where I was making these tape loops and constructing these patterns, and sometimes having a timing signal on the tape loop to control a sequencer, but I didn't say it was composing. I didn't even call it music. I don't know. It was the most brilliant trick I ever played on myself, because otherwise I would have been too self-critical to go forward, because it's very primitive. But instead I was making these toys. I imagined they would be like novelty games or something like that. And then I was asked to do music for a piece of choreography. And then I sort of realized I'm making music. And then I worked with tape loops and started making grooves with tape loops and did this one-man dub band in clubs, moved to New York, did that record on Atlantic, and then started getting artsy and weird in the 90s. And we don't have a lot of time, but I did a whole other set of projects in the 90s that had to do with people wearing headphones. And then mid-90s, 2000s, I went back to the club thing, only instead of concocting tape loops that I would then do dub reggae kind of transformations to, I decided I would concoct these grooves on the spot in front of the audience made out of radio. And I didn't max it. MSP hadn't come out yet. So I had this idea, and then like a few years after that, I heard about this software, and I thought, oh, there we go. Because I was not a full-on programmer. I've done C and I've done scripting and stuff, but I'm not really a coder except for in Max MSP. And so that kind of gets me. I think that answers.
Wow. So
well, the other thing is along the way I've did a lot of music for dance and performance art, and I did music for a film and a video, but it's mostly performance art and choreography and my own stuff.
So it's not. I would hazard to guess that this is not really a replicable career path that someone else is going to take. But
it's
but
not
I do
up
want
to me to say.
But I do want to ask if you have any advice or guidance on how to. We've talked so much at Hope about how to foster our own creativity, how to help younger people to find their creativity. We think about career paths. You know, Hope is all kinds of different people coming to learn and share. And I wonder if you would have any advice to share for someone that's trying to maybe develop their own creative spark, which you just described, your own pathway.
Well, look, everyone is different. Some people can work with a mentor, but that wasn't my path. And I think at this conference, that will not be the path for many. You talked about nurturing a creative spark. And so let's assume that you're the kind of person that wants to do that more or less independently. I would say embrace fearlessly that crazy, quirky thing that doesn't make sense to other people, that makes sense to you. I don't know why, but I was content to make impossibly repetitive music. And it wasn't developed like Philip Glass and Steve Reich. It was like really friggin' repetitive.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason, I was mesmerized. I just kept going. And find the place where you can be absorbed and just to hell with what other people may say about it. I think that may help some people. For other people, it just
great.
may not apply. And then through that absorption, you get facility.
Mm-hmm.
And I really believe in that richness that comes when you stay involved for a long time. You have to find the fascination that sustains you through the period when you start to develop skills and you realize, oh my gosh, I actually don't know how to do this. Now I have to learn. You have this spark and you make some progress, and it's so much so fast. And then the progress slows as you see as your horizons widen. And you have to find a path where that absorption and that fascination sustains through that. And I don't have a formula for it, except to say, if this applies to you, don't care what anybody says. Be off in the corner. But most of the other musicians, they did their tape loops. Like I took the electronic music class at Cornell, and we did tape loops for a week. Well, I kept on doing tape loops for 10 years. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Let yourself do that. And I think that hackers are doing that. You know, you have these incredibly in-depth discussions, like that, the digital text. I was getting ready for my show. I didn't quite follow it. But a lot of it was in German, and it was using modems to visualize text or something like that.
The German version of Minitel, which was France. It was early text system. Yeah, Bundes
Okay.
text. I can't remember the exact name of it now.
Yes, but that kind of absorption to say, hey, I can stay involved with this German Minitel equivalent, go as deeply as I want, and you get the inner reward, and it can turn into a conversation with the world, which is what I was lucky to get with Radio Wonderland. So I guess that's what I would say. I hope it applies to
That's great.
To somebody.
That's great. I'm sure it does, and I really appreciate you sharing your journey. I think that the last thing I want to get from you, because we had a few requests on the live Matrix chat here, is just give us the details on this album, because I think some people are interested in the 2016 album.
Okay. Oh, yes. Well, wait till you hear the new stuff. But the album is called Seize the Means. It's on a Danish record label, Clang, clang.cl. because they're Danish and Chilean. Wait, was clang.cl? Yes, yeah. Because this guy Lars, whose techno name is Lars from Mars, is between Copenhagen and I forget where in Chile, and it's still available, and it's also on Spotify. And stay tuned for the new releases. They're getting close to coming out of the hopper. But please come to live shows. And also, I do a live streaming show every Saturday. It's audio only. And I think, although I need to catch up on sleep after Hope and consider it, I think I want to do streaming performances in this new world, and with audio visual.
Oh yeah.
I'm so glad people were asking.
Yeah, well, of course. And the idea of streaming audio visual, I mean, we've had a little bit of that here at Hope already, and it's out there. That's what people are doing. And just as you were describing, people are maybe they are hunched over their laptop, maybe they are keeping up with their email. I don't know, but they sure are creating. There's creative.
Oh yeah, yeah. There is great stuff, and this new project I started to mention, it is going to be laptop focused. I've decided, okay, there's all these venues in Brooklyn where that's what's expected, and I show up with the shoes and the wheel. I have to get there early and drag the stuff around and say, okay, I have this hyper minimalist project, and I'll be in front of the laptop, and it's going to be okay.
Wow.
About this project.
This has been fascinating.
Yeah, thanks for staying up.
It's been great. So
thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you. So we've been talking with Joshua Freed, who is Radio Wonderland. We got about, I think it was right around 45 minutes of live performance, and we've had now almost that long, maybe even a little longer of discussion. So it's been such a pleasure having you as part of Hope, and I hope you're also participating. It sounds like you are participating in some of the.
Oh yes, yeah. Now that the show is over, I get very nervous before a show. Now that the show is over, yeah, I'm gonna be. I can't wait to join the villages and the hubs. Mm-hmm. Are they like working it up and happening, and I can float around in some Mozilla?
I've heard. Yes, and I've heard very good things about the Anarchist Village. They have been, in fact, I think they had this performance up. They might have me up on the screen there right now. They had a virtual screen that was basically broadcasting the live stream of Hope. But the experience in the Mozilla Hub is you're like an avatar, and you can talk with people, and they make it so that you can hear the other people that you're close to very well, and people that are further away a little bit less well. And so it's sort of like a cocktail party metaphor with 3D virtual objects and the ability to bring in signals.
Beautiful. Oh, so, I want to go. And they at the. Can I get in? Can you get me in?
Yeah, I think the link. I think they are open. I believe you can find the link on the wiki, or drop me a note, and I'll definitely send you the link.
But I can find it.
But the Mozilla hubs are not access restricted. They're as long as you know the link.
I was just kidding, like it was a club. But no, I'm a full-on Hope attendee as well.
Outstanding. Well, enjoy, and on behalf of all of us at Hope, thank you for bringing your story, your performance, your energy, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the week.
All right, yeah, you too. I'll see you in the chats and see you in the villages.
Thanks.
Bye, everybody. Thank you. All right. Bye.